I invite now Nicoleta Fotiade and Răzvan Costache. Shall I begin with Nicoleta because she was talking? Nicoleta Fotiade is media education facilitator. She's president of Media Wise Society in Romania. She's also a journalist. She is educated in journalism, media, cultural studies, and communication. She has more than 10 years of experience in media education and research.
Actually, 20.
20?
20.
20. Răzvan Costache is Director of Innovation at Bitdefender. And this is not the only one thing I would like to have with us, Răzvan, because he's a parent also, and I would like to talk about this parenthood in the age of digital communication. And also Răzvan started as a journalist at Evenimentul Zilei. Then he was into publishing and project management at Adevărul, holding over past 12 years, it's correct, 12 years? Yeah, he is at Bitdefender and he has focused on product management and digital transformation, leading the development of cybersecurity solutions that address evolving consumer needs. So let's talk about critical thinking, because today we wanted to show to our audience that in this past year we had 3 pillars in our project: history, journalism, and maybe learning about how to use and to be on social media, and about critical thinking. Critical thinking will be the next avenue in our development of our project. So let's begin talking about critical thinking in your perspective, and then in your perspective as parent and as an ITist, it's IT expert. So,
in my perspective, we don't teach critical thinking. We exercise critical thinking. I'm training and teaching media education, media literacy education, from a very cultural point of view. So that means we start reflecting on our own media consumption and use, and see how we do that, and see what we understand about media, what media are, how social media are organized, how they are regulated, and then we start building on that. The core principle is to exercise, critical thinking by understanding how to critically analyze and evaluate content, and not only content, but also practices. Like, why do I share this thing on Facebook? What makes me feel like? What do I want with this message? So you have questions related to what is this content, who produced it, in what context, and so on. But also you have questions of self-reflection to understand what are your core beliefs, how do they influence the way you interpret those messages. So in terms of disinformation, we don't teach about disinformation. We teach, for instance, children how to, in kindergarten, how to make a distinction between real and fantastic. How a story is constructed in a cartoon. What sort of images are used, and so on.
The age is 4 years.
Yeah, it's
to
4 or 5
begin
years.
to yeah.
You start as early as possible to coach or antrenez gândirea, to train the the cognitive ability to ask questions and to spot problems. If you start as early as kindergarten and then gradually ask even more important questions like why this new story, is this new story a correct one in the sense that it's an impartial story, it's not a biased news story? What bias means should be half learned by now. Let's say I'm thinking about high school. Because you've already exercised your critical thinking. Critical thinking comes very much in relation with our emotions. We cannot expect people to be critical thinkers, and that's it. That's not possible. So it's very important, as I was saying earlier, self-reflection is the point where you start. I was saying that
it's a new approach of critical thinking.
I'm not sure if I don't know. This is the way we do it, and this is the way we do it because we've been exercising and testing this for 20 years, reading research, understanding what works, what doesn't work, learning from our mistakes, and so on. When I started teaching media education, my understanding was that I have to make the students bright people that will understand everything about me, it was like an ideal, but not necessarily realistic. So I was lucky enough to study in United Kingdom, media studies and cultural studies, and they focus very much on the consumer, on the user. Of course, they take into account media production, because that's relevant, but also how the same message, for instance, is interpreted very differently by different people. And I do this exercise a lot in our...
As a parent, not as an expert in cybersecurity, how did you educate your child?
First of all, as a parent, it is very, very scary. So I grew up in the Wild West period of internet access in Romania, and I think that was much easier than it is now. It's scary because we are constantly bombarded by some sort of algorithmic manipulation. And manipulation doesn't really need to be related to something as serious as propaganda. It can be associated with actually convincing you to buy a certain toy or a certain food. So what I practice with my son, and I see it working, we start by actually telling him to ask questions, because you cannot have critical thinking if you are not used to ask questions. So we practice that a lot. And after asking him to ask questions, we try together to find reasons. Why would Mega Image offer free stickers? And I try to relate to the topics that interest him. Why do you think these stickers are free? Why do you think you need to collect them?
Răzvan, how old is he?
He's 10 now.
Thank you.
Yeah. And it's the same thing with YouTube, yeah? He's a fan of YouTube. I showed him all the content platforms out there, from Disney to Netflix to everything, trying to offer him some sort of clean content, yeah? But he still prefers YouTube over any other platforms of content. And I try to discuss with him the algorithm, yeah? He doesn't care about the algorithm, but we discuss, I stay with him and we watch and we see what is the next suggestion, yeah? So I show him, look, you watched 3 movies about Minecraft, which is his favorite game. right now the suggestions that the platform is giving you is this is your preference. Right now, nothing will ever change this. Somewhere in a server, there is a line where it says Philip likes Minecraft. Right now, it's my account, so it says Răzvan likes Minecraft. But I try to explain the idea that once you are engaging with a platform or anything, you are giving away information about yourself that will shape how the content will be delivered to you. So it all starts with asking questions about what's happening around you, because nothing is free, nothing is without a purpose of being offered to you. Yeah. So, for example, related to YouTube and Facebook, I discussed with him and also with my parents, why is this platform free? Yeah. What's the reason behind it? How do they make money and so on? And this makes you think and makes you ask questions. So,
or much more responsible.
Yeah.
How can we put this kind of warning for youngsters, many of them in 20s or 30s, to be aware of the perils in social media? We had a sort of challenge for our essays. We asked them, could be an influencer, a critical thinking influencer. And we have the essays on our web site. What do you think?
First of all,
it's catchy to have this kind of influencing.
Huh? I will answer the first question first. How do we make young people aware? First of all, we don't try to teach them from this protectionist perspective that there are perils and risks, and we learn only about that. I was saying earlier that the approach should be much more inclusive, taking into account the whole experience of media interaction. Of course, risk and disinformation and cyberbullying, they are part of this ecosystem, let's say, digital ecosystem. And while you are starting to ask questions as early as 10 years old, even earlier, you sort of develop this permanent exercise to understand where there is a risk. First of all, to spot the risk, like, let's say, disinformation, because we've been talking a lot about disinformation. It's important to, first of all, be able to spot disinformation, and this means you have some knowledge about that. You know how, the use of false dichotomy can try to manipulate somebody to think that, for instance, if I criticize USR, I'm with PSD, right? Or if I was vaccinated.
This is called in literature labeling somebody as
exactly.
Yeah.
There are so many other
opposite or as a
cognitive
supporter.
distortions that
Yeah.
are used to manipulate. So if you have this knowledge, then you in order to spot this information, then you see that some point of view is not there. Then the second step would be to confirm that there is disinformation, and this means a more profound exercise that asks for time and availability from the person, and sometimes we are not available to do that. But the most important step is the third step, which means action. What do? You can do nothing, spot disinformation, don't have time to check it, whatever, I go to the other thing I have to do.
But you at least don't share this.
Then you start verifying the information, and but you have to have exercise to understand what questions to ask. And the context of that information is the most important. And then, if you want to share, and you may not have spotted the disinformation, then you share. Because maybe you reacted emotionally, I don't know, you were furious or enthusiastic, and oh, this sounds very good to me, let's share it on the social media.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah.
How can we see
just to add
yeah.
To what Răzvan said, all these questions that Răzvan exercises with his son, teachers in primary school can exercise it very well with the students. There is a lot of place for that.
This is a necessity for our next few years, to reform the education. Yeah. So, how can we spot this information when AI is so good in providing falsehood, false information, false stories, conspiracies?
I think the main problem, let's say, is not that it provides false information, because the AI doesn't know which information is good, but it's being trained to keep attention. So your attention is the main currency here. So this is what they train algorithms to do. They don't know the difference between right or wrong. They know how to keep your attention. And the main thing that I think we need to keep in mind is the platforms don't care from where the money comes. So this is why we are having, as Codruța was saying, paid commercials, ads on Facebook that promote malicious actors. That is true. 90% of investment scams are offered through paid, verified ads on social media. So it's very, very important to not think about the algorithm, but the source of the information that is being fed to you. You cannot beat the algorithm. So anyone trying to think that it's not going to happen to you, I'm not going to get sucked up into an endless scroll, or I'm going to always spot when I'm being manipulated, that's not true. It's going to happen in some way or another, but the main thing you need to see is the source of the information. And this brings me to the discussion, journalists versus influencers. And that is a very dangerous thing that is happening right now, because the line between these two are becoming blurry. Yeah, that's very dangerous.
Can I add to that? Because I thought it was interesting, the discussion you had with the journalists about that. One of them said that print media disappeared in Romania because of technological development. But I would argue that there are other reasons for that as well, because if you look in Western Europe, for instance, print media is still there. You can go and have a coffee in the morning and with the newspaper,
reading,
which is
Times of London, for
the
instance.
Guardian.
Oh, the Guardian. The Guardian, yes, of course. I'm sorry.
Sorry.
I'm a subscriber of Times of London, that's why I'm sorry. Yeah.
And we should see what happened in United Kingdom and what happened in Romania. And I think in Romania we have a huge problem, first of all, of the journalists being together as a guild, to protect themselves against, politics and so on. Of course, the digital technology had an impact. And of course, journalists had to become their own PR people. It's the way things go. If you don't do a bit of PR on your social media, then your material won't.
You don't exist.
You don't exist. We need to adapt to the social reality that is in front of us. If we say people don't need materials well written from journalists, I think that's a huge generalization and also dangerous. I think people need information, impartial information, unbiased information. If I look at myself trying to get information from Romanian media, I always get really frustrated and sometimes even furious, because the materials are really badly written. You can see there is a lot of incompetence there, and this should, we should look, how is the School of Journalism? Who is financing journalism and so on? Investigative journalists, independent investigative journalists are good for society, for democratic society, but they are not enough. You need the mainstream media to help you get the information.
Okay, yes, right. Do we have questions? No? Yeah, we have.
I wanted to ask from your experience, because you mentioned family and teachers, school, as the main actors that form the critical thinking for children.
I would add the library as well.
Okay. And are there parents and teachers afraid of losing control in relation to their children when you speak about critical thinking? And what arguments can you bring in this discussion?
I was listening to Răzvan. He started saying, "I'm really scared," or something like that, and I think it's a normal emotion, because he's aware of this digital medium. He's scared because he's a parent, but at the same time, he's doing something. He's helping his child understand this world and, navigate. Bring a child from a village and let him alone on the streets of Bucharest, he won't be able to manage, right? So if you expose him a few days, a week in Bucharest, he will become able to he will learn how to manage, right? To take the metro and so on. Parents themselves, they did not grow up with digital media, unfortunately, and they have to adapt, and it's difficult for them too. They don't have time, they have to take care of their kids, they have a job. It's very, very difficult to be like the perfect parent and offer your child also the digital education they need. In Răzvan's case, he is a person that knows a lot about the digital media. But
he knows about the dark side of digital media, that's why.
Yeah, and also that. But as far as I know, at this point, there are two kinds of parents, if you like. Parents that they say, okay, it's free, go ahead. Do whatever, I don't have time to discuss with you about what you're doing online. Okay. Then there are the parents that are really scared, but they don't know what questions to ask. And they start with the censorship. And that's, either of these examples are good for the children.
That never works, so.
They never, yeah. They need something in between. And if the parents have a difficulty in doing that, they could try to, talk to the school, talk to the library. There are programs right now in Romania that are dealing with these issues. We at Media Society, we have a great strategic partnership with the Digitaliada program from Orange Foundation. And what we do is to invest in a long-term training and mentorship program for teachers from primary, secondary, and high school to integrate media education into their teaching, no matter the subject they are teaching, but also to be aware themselves about media in order to be able to give this advice and ask their students this kind of questions. But because these questions, they come up. Mr. Pop, I think, said that young people are not interested by history. I would disagrey. I think it's very important how you put the problem.
The packaging is always the most important
Yes.
at certain ages.
I mean, if you go and talk to teenagers and you show them those photographs from the 80s with young people with AC/DC written on their T-shirt in the police station because they wrote AC/DC on their T-shirt, that is for young people today is like, what? And then you can start a real conversation about
or to have long hair. Yeah.
Or long hair. And then you can start a real conversation about freedom of expression and so on.
To that conversation, I think it's important to realize you are also fighting for his attention span together with social media, together with gaming, with entertainment, with teachers. So it's very important as parents and teachers and educators to be aware that we do not have their attention by default just because we are someone important in their lives or we work for an organization that should be able to go to them. You need to be aware that you're fighting for their attention, and packaging is...
But short attention span may be good news as well, because we are very concerned about a lot of rubbish information and disinformation. Okay, but the short attention span.
Yeah, I don't think it's a solution, but yeah, you're right.
No, what I mean is to judge this reality in a context. It's the rhetoric that we use, how we discuss the problem is very important. Because, okay, we have this information, but we don't really know if we talk, well, we haven't talked about forms of disinformation. As far as I understand, in this discussion, we talked about disinformation that comes from a geopolitical logic, right? Disinformation that comes from an enemy who is trying to, I don't know, make our society dysfunctional and create a war globally. That's one kind of disinformation, and indeed it's a really serious problem, and we should deal with it in different ways. Regulation is one, monitoring narratives is another one, teaching people about it, and so on. But then you have many other forms of disinformation. Anna was saying about climate change, non-believers, and health problems. That's another kind of disinformation, and for that kind of disinformation, that is more pervasive, and that is the type of disinformation that we don't necessarily spot easily, because it activates our core beliefs. If I don't believe in vaccine, then I will believe what Ms. Tere is saying about that, and that is what we need to exercise to understand about ourselves.
We would like to talk about critical thinking a lot, but we are at the final question in this panel. I would like to ask you also, who wins the war of narratives on social media, on this kind of relationship with social media?
Yeah, I think I was thinking about what Codruța was saying, that the golden age of journalism is over, and that is true. And the war of narratives, I think, will be won by the one who manages to attract an audience, because it's about volumes. And the higher the volumes, the larger your audience, the bigger your name becomes. So you can start with disinformation, but if you amass a large audience, then you have won, because you get a domino effect to what you are saying, and that's something that is dangerous. And if we don't get the right people to have an audience, then yeah, the bad actors win on this. And I was reading what you are writing on the website on Language Matters, and I was thinking how can we get to actually having people practice critical thinking? And I think is very, very important in the world of war of narratives is statistical reasoning. Because what is missing right now from a lot of media publications that are trying to do good is using statistical reasoning to show a bigger picture. Because we are so implanted into our day-to-day lives with current events that we forget the whole picture. How does the economy look in the last 50 years, not in the last year? How is world peace looking in the last 100 years, not just since the start of the war in Ukraine? And it's the same for, I don't know, women's rights. And every time someone tells you that, I don't know, you're gonna lose your rights or they're gonna change the gender of your children, if you look at the bigger picture and see how we evolved as a species, as a culture, and society, then you have a better chance to go towards critical thinking.
Nice. I have a problem with the paradigm in which we are talking. Why the war of narratives? I would need to understand that first before I answer the question. And what kind of narratives? Because from my perspective, my narrative is a good one. So if I get a lot of audience, way for me. Is it good? Is it bad? So again, I think we need to judge these things in the context. If we start generalizing a lot and labeling situations and saying, oh, this information is there and it's killing us. How is killing? What do you, when you say disinformation, because there are these surveys in which 80% of the people say, yes, I've been I've been exposed to disinformation. But the question stops there. If you start asking that person, okay, so how were you exposed? What kind of disinformation? What did you do? What did you feel? Then you'll see that, you know, it's not that bad.